And I'm going to show you how to take this piece of meat, which is an elongated muscle that separates the short loin from the rest of the loin, and how to trim it, tie it, and roast it, most importantly. The first thing we have to do is make sure that it is trimmed correctly. The butcher can do this for you, but a trimmed tenderloin, I find, costs a lot more than an untrimmed. It's easy. You unwrap it and cut out these big pieces of fat. Try not to remove any of the meat. Just carefully take off the fat and any of this sinew that you'll find. And then the ingredients, well, it is a tenderloin, and it weighs about 4 to 5 pounds when trimmed and tied. Green peppercorns, which add a very interesting flavor to the meat. Salt, olive oil. That's it. The equipment you need is a pan large enough in which to brown it, and a tray with a rack large enough to roast it, and the oven, 475 degrees. I'm going to show you how to roast this piece right now. So now the fat has been removed from our beautiful tenderloin of beef. We want to remove this long chain. This can be cooked up as little minute steaks. It can be ground for just a wonderful hamburger. But this is attached way up to about here on the tenderloin. Just trim it off. What we're trying to do is make as even a tenderloin as possible. Now this little tail can be tied right here. Once tied, it's all going to look pretty much uniform. And tying is a little bit of a process. Take your string, this is cotton twine, butcher's string, and tie a knot right here. Be firm. And then you take it over your hand like this, and over the meat, and separate it, about every inch or so. You see what I'm doing? It's fun to do this. Pull it tautly, see? And then do that again. Butchers do this so quickly. 1, 2, 3, and the whole thing is tied up. I learned a lot of it from my great uncle, Vutchy Joe, in Jersey City, New Jersey, where Vutchy Joe had a prime butcher shop. And so this is how you do it. Isn't that nice and neat? And then take your string and go underneath each one of these. And remember to bring the meat to room temperature before you start to cook it. That way you're assured that the inside will cook at the same time as the outside. So here we have the meat, and now what to put on the meat. The green peppercorns, about 1 tablespoon, just kind of crush in a mortar and pestle. They come packed in brine, so they're a little moist, but easily crushed. They have a nice fruity flavor and pungent flavor, which is nice on the filet. And now rub with olive oil all over. This is very important because we're going to brown this on a griddle pan. And it won't stick if you have the olive oil on it. And now the salt. Sprinkle the meat with, at least a tablespoon of salt all over. This really does help flavor the meat and prepares it for roasting. And then the green peppercorns. Again, rub those in. They're not going to stick as easily, but you'll have these rubbing the wonderful crushed flavor into the meat itself. Now put this on the heated griddle pan. It's going to splutter and splatter. And being dry will really help sear the meat instead of steaming the meat. Looks good. And let it just stay there. Don't be impatient. It's going to take about 3 minutes per side to brown it correctly. And this is a very clever way to do it on the griddle pan because most people do not have a pan in which this will fit, including me. Oh, you will see how nicely this meat is getting a gorgeous color. Now the meat tells you when it's ready to be turned. If you try to turn it and it's still sticking, do not try to turn it. It comes right off the griddle when it is ready, that brown, beautiful, almost caramelized surface on the meat. Oh, lovely. And this is the pan that I have prepared for it to go into the oven. This is an oven rack, and this is just a cookie sheet. It's perfect for this because the air circulation under the rack will allow the meat to cook more evenly. And roast the meat in a conventional oven at 475 degrees, preheated of course. And if you have a convection oven, which is the best way to cook a piece of meat like this, reduce the temperature to 450 degrees. I think it's ready to turn. I'm trying to brown the meat really nicely on all sides. We've browned the meat enough. Turn off the griddle pan and remove the meat immediately to the rack. Looks good. Right into the oven. It's going to take anywhere from 15 minutes to maybe 20, 25 minutes to cook the meat to a temperature, internal temperature of 125 degrees. You don't want to overcook it, and it will continue to cook once it's removed from the oven. I have a couple green peppercorns I'm just going to put on top and into the oven. Now, this is what a finished fillet looks like. It's been resting here on the board for 10 minutes. Remove all the string, and I find it just snipping each string really is the easiest way to get rid of it. It smells good, it looks good, and I'm sure it tastes good. So here, just remove every last vestige of string. You don't want to be feeding anybody any string. Oh, and I don't know if I told you, when you buy the meat, make sure that the meat is soft. If it's too hard to the touch, it might mean that it is full of fat on the inside, and you don't want that. And now for slicing, with a very sharp knife, slice into beautiful pieces, about 1/4 of an inch thick. Now that is a beautiful fillet. And it will look wonderful on a platter like this. That looks good. And I would say that's perfectly cooked. There you have a really nicely roasted, beautiful cut of meat, the beef tenderloin.